This podcast is part of the Pod Syndicate family. For more criminally compelling shows, articles, and conversations, head to wearepodsyndicate.com.
Get the behind-the-scenes information on the breweries and beers you love with What's on Tap's Brewery Sessions.
All right, so we're here today at the Baghaven Wild Ale Beer Celebration, and we're doing our interview with Second Ship Brewing. And who are we talking to today?
Libby Crider, co-owner of Second Ship Brewing.
All right, welcome to Copenhagen. Is this your first time here?
No, it's my second and Steve's fifth or sixth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is the inaugural event for the Wild Ale Celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Is it what you expected?
It is everything and more. Of course, if everyone's going to do something, he's going to do it to the best of his capabilities and this exceeds expectations. So it's pretty wonderful. It's not overly crowded. There's incredible beer, incredible presence by breweries here, and yeah.
All right. So if you were to take the breweries that were here and compare them, like, what would this be like in America?
The Side Project Invitational, which we were just at. They did a big stout and barley wine festival. You see owners, you see people that are really invested into these breweries here representing, which is what Side Project does. I would also put it up there with the Boulevardia by Boulevard that represents some really great breweries across the United States. I don't know, I'm just really thankful to be here and be included. So I don't know what our brewery is doing right.
Oh, you definitely deserve to be here.
Well,
thank
you.
For sure. We love Second Shift, and we haven't had a lot of your beers here. They seem to kind of come in waves.
They do. So we send about 2 to 3 times a year with a local distributor based out of Germany, but they have a bar here, Himmelgut, I believe is the bar. Henrik, who helps run the distributorship, has been wonderful. So whenever we send beer over a festival, he makes sure to add on to that multiples of beer to...
You sent over a Pilsner, I think, last year.
Technical Ecstasy.
Yes.
My favorite beer we do.
I had to tell you, it was amazing.
Well,
and I was just like so sad because I'm like, I'm not gonna get it again. Oh my God. And like Pilsner is such a weird style because it's the new kind of retrending of beer, but
I think it's and I don't mean to say backlash, but there's been such a push against these huge, over-the-top, just overly fruited, overly decadent beers. There's been a push towards just simplicity, which I really appreciate. Pilsners, and in a way, and I hate to say it, but I mean, you see it with the seltzer trends, with the hard seltzer.
That hasn't made it to Europe yet, the seltzer trend.
We see it in the United States. Even if it doesn't, there's just been a push towards understanding what you're drinking, understanding that alcohol has caloric value to it, and understanding how to treat your body. And so while these beers may be decadent and wonderful, it's an entire 500, 600 calorie meal.
Right. So we've been through the pastry stout phase. We've been through the New England IPA, crazy adjunct IPA stage. And now I think the people that have been through these transitions are kind of coming back to like, I just want something I can drink that's really good.
I think so. Something clean that you can't hide flaws behind, something palate cleansing, something you don't feel guilty about drinking. And that's just my opinion. I don't know if that's for sure. I just know that when I go to a brewery, the first thing I'm going to reach for is a Pilsner, because also, I mean, a flagship of a brewery, if you make a really clean, great Pilsner, you know that brewer stands behind something. It's very hard to hide flaws behind a Pilsner.
I really agree, because if I have a good Pilsner from a brewery, I'm like, well, then they're not going to fuck up other stuff. Right.
I mean, the New England IPA trend is not going anywhere. It is it is a fantastic beer that's now become accepted with its... People drank hazy IPAs before with like Alchemist and not realizing what they look like, and now that they're accepting the visual sight in comparison to taste, like that's not going anywhere. I do feel like the over-the-top triple dry hopped, quadruple dry hop, just the extreme versions maybe will die in a die out. Who knows? But
I think just the price point is going to kill that in the end, because the triple dry hopping is so expensive, and it just adds. Like so you take an average beer and you multiply it by a factor of 2,
right?
Because you have to dump in so much extra stuff that really doesn't affect the outcome in the end.
I mean, in the United States, craft beer drinkers make up 3% of all consumers that consume alcohol. So at some point, we're going to have to realize that we have to reach a broader consumer base. And now that we're oversaturated with close to 10,000 breweries, we have to reach people that wouldn't normally drink our beer. Yeah. So do you do that with a quadruple dry hop New England style beer, or do you do that with a lager? You do it with a lager.
Yeah. And then there's been so many amazing, or so many interesting purchases recently, especially like the what was it in California where the Chicago no-name company bought?
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! Oh, Kings and Convicts bought Ballast Point. That's what it was.
What the hell? Yeah. That's amazing.
I mean, we also look at the side history behind that. It was a lawyer, a hotel mogul. I mean, and that is what people are investing in these days. I mean, they see craft beer as a cash cow. They don't see it as an industry. And I wish people would kind of pull back the veil and see, like, we work 80 hours a week with a family, and it definitely puts us, any small business does. It's like any small business. They come in assuming that we drink beer for fun, and it's maybe we have 1 or 2 beers maybe a night, but this is a business. We have to keep it running.
So how would you describe, so I'm from the South, so how would you describe the Southern beer scene?
Emerging. There's a lot of blue laws that are being repealed from the South in the United States that are giving places like Texas a lot more control.
Okay, well, Texas has a really weird alcohol law. There's a real reason why there's not a huge import-export within Texas. I mean, outside of...
but giving breweries their own capabilities to sell their own beer across their bar was huge. That's a huge
that was a huge change in the beer laws there.
There was huge steps in Georgia being made. I feel like Alabama, Louisiana are not far behind. Oklahoma, exactly. There's a lot of blue laws being repealed because I feel like legislators and state representatives are realizing that beer is a taxable income. It's a hugely taxable income, and it brings revenue to your state. So by repealing that,
so for people that don't know where the blue laws are, so after Prohibition, they put in a bunch of regulations that said that you can't sell beer in certain areas amongst certain criteria unless you had a certain percentage of the populace that could vote for these laws. It's a very, very weird, arbitrary concept. And so now what's happening is there's been a lot of repeals of these laws, and in the South where, I mean, quite frankly, there's a love of alcohol in the South, but the craft beer scene. I mean, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Mississippi. I mean, these are all, heavy whiskey, bourbon states. But the beer craft scene hasn't caught up to those realities yet. I feel like you're seeing, like, when you look at Tennessee and you're looking at Mississippi and Arkansas and Missouri, there's been a real shift in the way that beer's presented and the ways are evolving in those areas.
There's definitely a pride chip behind it. If you look at, Georgia is key to look at. Look at Atlanta. There's Monday Night Brewing in Atlanta. There is in Texas, there's Austin Beer Works, which is bow down, phenomenal.
I mean, there's like 15, 20 breweries in Dallas alone.
And Fort Worth is, I think, Fort Worth and San Antonio are definitely worth taking a peek at. You look at the largest growth areas in the United States, and they tend to be in the South, and those are where craft beer drinkers are going to go. Not that the older generation doesn't enjoy their craft beer, but you see the younger generation are the ones that kind of feed into the hype breweries, how much I love or hate that type of relationship, but also breweries kind of follow. So you have the beer scene in Nashville, which is great with Bearded Iris. You have Yazoo, Embrace the Funk. You have Southern Grist. In Kentucky, you have Against the Grain. Louisville, which is phenomenal.
Louisville's a huge beer city.
And then Dauntless Distributing, which distributes down there, has such a... The great thing about craft beer in the United States is we're finding these distributors have an equal amount of passion about craft beer than the breweries do. And so while there's also an equal amount of distributors that don't care about it, you see in the South that they're invested as much as the breweries are and invested in helping those laws get changed.
And St. Louis is a real interesting nexus point of America.
God.
So you've got the Mason-Dixon line cutting right through the middle of it, basically.
Right.
So you've got like the Illinois kind of part, and then you've got the Deep South heritage at the same time, and then you've got the Mississippi Delta, which is its own kind of burden to bear.
Right.
So how do you feel that St. Louis fits in the modern beer scene?
I think that we're forerunners, and I'm not trying to be egotistical in any way, shape, or form. I really am impressed by the St. Louis beer scene. I mean, you have Perennial Artisan Ales, you have Side Project Brewing, which is this worldwide nexus of beer.
Yeah.
You have Urban Chestnut, which has ties to old world Germany in their beer scene. You have the Civil Life, you have us. I mean, you have this burgeoning new beers coming along, and everybody thought, in my experience, when the St. Louis craft beer scene exploded, that AB would just quash us. And it's been the opposite. AB wants to promote craft beer as much as they can, because they know that in order to survive, they need us. So it's been this really symbiotic relationship, and it's been incredible to kind of look at St. Louis and then see these other cities follow trade, to work together rather than working against each other in the craft beer scene. Like, I'll call Emily and Phil from Perennial and saying, what did you do with this beer? What did you do differently? They'll share their secrets. We understand. We'll try to better ourselves. I can call Corey at any time to ask for a brick of yeast at some point, his opinion. It's just a really, really close-knit community. And I'm hoping that other cities kind of follow and know that by cannibalizing each other, you're creating a self-imploding ecosystem as far as craft beer. We need each other. We're 3%,
Yes.
like I said, of the entire scene. So.
It's kind of funny now that you mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, AB InBev, Budweiser is based out of St. Louis.
Yeah.
And yet, like, when I think of like amazing sour beers in America, I think Side Project, I think Sick and Chipped, and I just think
Perennial,
I forget that, like, oh shit, AB InBev is also based out of there.
AB InBev has the quality control kitchens and also the test kitchens to take us all out, but they don't, because they know that it won't work for them. A, I feel like, and B, they know that working with us makes them relevant. Unfortunately, and that sounds so egotistical, but like, we have a really, really great craft beer scene. We're all really close, and AB wants to be a part of that, and I am very appreciative for that. So.
What's really interesting?
They've opened up their lab doors. Anytime we want to have anything tested, we're welcome to walk into the AB lab and have anything done. They're just so welcoming for us. And I'm just,
oh my god, I can sit down and talk to you for another hour, honestly. There are so many questions I have for you. You need to keep opening it. It's like keep opening more and more doors. And it's like, holy shit, let's just sit down and talk about how does AB InBev work with craft breweries in the St. Louis scene. Because Carlsberg, as you know, you wouldn't have yeast strains that we have today if it wasn't for Carlsberg taking those and then just giving them to the public. So, I mean, AB InBev, for all of their faults, they do a lot of good for the beer scene. And there's a lot of like conversations to have around that. And I'm so glad that you don't see them as adversarial, but see them as...
everybody wants to vilify them. Everybody wants to vilify any brewery that sells out. But as Steve and I have always said, unfortunately, I mean, you have to stand for something. We stand for craft beer, but if AB InBev were to come offer us $10 million and we could give our 9 employees a better life as a result, we're going to take door B. Like,
I would totally do that too. I mean, I don't blame Wicked Weed. I don't blame any...
we would start a different brewery the same way we started this brewery, and then everybody that came to work for us would have a better life as a result. And that's all you can hope for, is just creating a lasting impression on the people that work for you in the community. So
exactly, because that's the thing. If you started another brewery with a new brand, it would do just as good because of the beer, right?
That's the hope. So, and that's kind of where I'm like very nervous right now, is there's almost 10,000 breweries. You can make the best liquid in the entire United States, but unfortunately right now it's a teetering line between hype and quality, and I think I may have had one too many beers already to start talking about that.
But there's a bit of hype around Second Shift here in Copenhagen.
Oh, for sure. Well, I was very excited to see that you guys were attending here today.
Thank you.
Because what's so weird is I don't know you for sour beers. I know you for other styles,
Everything,
IPAs and the.
Stouts.
Not stouts. Pilsner.
Pilsner.
And so, because that's what we've seen before. And so when I saw you here, I was like, well, I've got to try what they're doing because I'm very curious about you guys. So what did you guys bring to the festival, and what inspired you to bring the beers that you brought to the festival?
So the first session we brought what's called Chateau La Douchebag, named after my husband, because he's a self-proclaimed douchebag. He wanted to make a really, really nice, soft, delicate, tart, funky beer.
He did. It's so good. This is one of my favorites of the festival.
Very complex and balanced.
So it's a Solera method beer. So basically, we did a cool ship. We saved the yeast. It's banked at a yeast bank just south of where we're located. We try to do a Solera method where we repitch on top of it. It's usually just a blonde ale or something very innocuous, and keep the yeast going. If we find that the yeast does not keep going, we'll grab some from our yeast bank. They'll send some up for us, and we'll repitch the barrels. Just a soft, light, funky beer to show that douchebags can enjoy soft, tart beers. And
Did you get through?
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Daniel.
Daniel! Oh my Daniel made this beer fest happen.
Can we finish up real quick and then I'll talk to you in a second? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then we also brought Bridget, which is our soft Fooder aged saison in Fooder Crafters Fooder. It is a very light, tart saison. And then tomorrow we brought our Mikkeller Baghaven collab, Evolution of Friendship.
I'm looking forward to that.
And then
we're here all 3 sessions, so
perfect. You'll be able to try the Baghaven collab, and then we brought our Speciation collab, the beer number 1, which is also a very tart, funky, sour beer. So today was soft. Tomorrow is all the sour funk, and then after that we brought our Katie beer, or Katie, and then a fruited version of our Katie beers.
Great. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for even caring. So
No.
You were great. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate
we
it.
love having you on the show, and thank you so much for being a part of this.
Enjoy. I
right,
appreciate it.
thank
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking with Daniel here, who is... Well, how would you describe your role?
I mean, I would say like one of the organizers.
We're organizers, but...
General
organizer. I also host the MBCC, so this is like the baby sister of MBCC, and just a kind of a warmer before we go really crazy in Copenhagen in May.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, do you work with all the celebrations or just the MBCC?
I also work with the Tokyo version, so yeah, all the Mikkeller celebrations, and this is just an additional one. We would like to keep it like more separate, so we have Mikkeller beer celebration, Tokyo and Copenhagen, and this is a Baghaven Wild Ale Celebration, so it's another thing.
What made you want to do this?
I mean,
so at what point did you go, you know what we really need, guys? We need a Wild Ale celebration. That's the fucking tits right there.
I mean, it's a trendy beer style at the moment as well.
Yeah.
You see it in especially in the northern part of Europe as well. We are brewing a lot of really good sours and really local good stuff, and local yeast, local berries, whatever, which is really nice. And then we have this brewery, Baghaven, obviously, that would like to celebrate the beer style and invite all the brewers' friends. So why not? I mean, why not hosting a Wild Ale celebration?
Yeah, no, I mean, you've invited literally the best of Wild Ale brewers. It's, quite frankly, amazing. I have to say, when I looked at the lineup, I was like, there's only 30 breweries, but you know what? I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
This is more than enough.
Exactly.
It definitely doesn't need to be as big as MBCC. It works just the size it is right now.
Yeah. To be honest, we also like the idea of going back to basic and going back to a small amount of breweries, the very best, and because we kind of miss the old days when it was not too many breweries and not too many. Back to Sparta, actually, that has been a theme.
It has.
It has. Which from Mikkeller as well, and he liked the idea of going back to Sparta. So this is it, and this is where we also find it very close to Baghaven. This is part of the Refshaløen in Copenhagen. It's cold, it's raw, it's wild.
But you know what? That's actually the rawness of it makes it feel even more intimate, I think, because it's not so cold that you're just like freezing your ass off. But it's just like, I got my coat on, I feel like I'm in the Nordics, I'm drinking sour beers, I'm drinking wild ales. It just feels natural, actually.
And beers warms you up, right?
Yeah, it does.
There's been a few MBCCs where I've been sitting at the wrong place and sweating. Like, oh no, I'm too warm. This is perfect.
Exactly.
This is
Exactly.
great.
Yeah, I know what you mean. At MBCC, it's in May, so it's either 30 degrees or it's raining. So,
Yeah.
but we have been lucky.
So how has this festival done so far? Is it meeting your expectations or exceeding, or like what do you think?
Well, we're only 2 hours old right now, but I can only see happy faces around, and I don't smell the farts yet. But
it's coming, I'm sure.
It's coming for
It's still
sure.
early.
Yeah, but so far so good, and it seems like there's room for everybody, and the beers are great, right?
No, definitely.
So I mean, this is a great launching point. how do you see is there going to be a year 2? Do we expect bigger things from year 2?
Well, I'm meeting up with Mikkeller on Tuesday to talk about this, but we definitely hope so. We definitely hope so, and we're looking forward to all the feedback from both brewers and all the guests as well. But we would definitely like to do another one. We don't do single events like this. We would like to make it as a permanent stuff. So.
I was kind of curious if this was a one-off or the beginning of something new, because sour beers, it's 30 breweries, it's 60 beers, a few more, but at the same time, it's like 60 sour beers. That's a lot on the stomach. That's a real rough.
And that's only if you have one session.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're here for like all 3 sessions and you did the gold ticket and you had
200 beers.
Yeah, I mean it's an enormous amount of beers.
But you can have a few sessions and then you're ready to go again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So when you invited the brewers, did you give them a criteria on which they had to meet, or you just said it's sour beers, bring whatever you want?
We said like wild fermented beers, spontaneous fermented beers, or saisons.
Yeah.
And there was a few breweries who couldn't like fulfill the whole 6 different beers of that style.
Yeah.
But they had to.
I think there's one Pilsner and there's one stout.
But it's still like a
everything else,
wild fermented Pilsner or something like that. There's no stouts, by the way. It's just it was a mistake.
Okay, all right. So
there's no stouts here.
all right, cool.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's an interesting, maybe some sort of wild element to the stout that I'm not aware of there. But
That's a typo.
It's been quite frankly amazing. So when you start looking at inviting breweries to an event like this, how do you pick the breweries? Like, what's the criteria for that?
First of all, it's my colleague Aaron, who is the head brewer of Baghaven.
Yeah.
He obviously invited all of his brewer friends that he has been brewing with the past many years. So that's how it started. This is a party, a fest of all the wild ale breweries that Aaron knows.
Oh, that's great. He's got a lot of really great friends. I got.
Yeah, he does. He has a really nice network.
Yeah,
in that
he
way.
does. Any questions?
No, I'm just really happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here. I think this is an amazing kickoff. The first year looks to be a rousing success. I honestly had no idea what to expect for turnout because I'm kind of like...
And it's also in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere as well. That's the key factor. It's kind of like once you get here, you're kind of like, where the shit am I?
I must be honest. We also worked a lot of how to like wayfind this place. So that's why there was a fire truck going back and forth.
Oh, I heard the fire truck. It was really nice. Yeah.
It's a part of the experience.
I really like the fact that as soon as I got off the bus, someone handed me a small flyer with instructions on how to walk here.
Yeah.
That was an amazing little aspect of it all.
Cool. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it, and thank you for
Arranging all this.
Really appreciate it.
I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right, so here with Burning Sky, and we're talking to
Tom.
Tom?
Yeah.
And who are you?
I'm a brewer and blender.
Brewer and blender.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you differentiate between the two?
Well,
When do you put your brewing hat on? When do you put your blending hat on?
yeah, it's a good question. There are different things that need doing in a brewery all the time.
Yeah.
So, we have to work on our schedule. So when we're brewing, we're brewing. My mind is often on blending. I'm often thinking about the beers that we're gonna package. It's so you're often preoccupied with that. But I don't think you can have like when you have a brewery like ours, you don't always have one without the other. You're kind of doing a bit of everything.
Where are you based out of?
We're in Sussex, so we're.
Oh, so you're the UK.
Yeah.
You're almost like the lone brewery in this.
Yeah, we're the only UK brewery. Which is a bit of an honour, really, to be there.
I was just going to say, that's pretty cool, right?
It is. It's,
yeah. Well, because outside of Brewdog, I can't think of like any real sour breweries.
There's a few breweries doing like mixed fermentation beers and things like that, and there have been for quite a few years, I guess. So it's definitely an honour for us to be here. This is very much our focus.
I think we've been aware of Burning Sky for at least the past 2 or 3 years because
but that's because of a lot of different beer styles. We have gotten quite a few of your farmhouse or saisons.
Right. Okay.
In Sweden, at least.
I think Burning Sky probably think saisons.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
Well, that's nice. I mean, that's like we started off doing those. We do hoppy pale beers as well because we love them. We do cask beer too, which is mostly for the local area, I guess. Which is something that we love. But when we started, we very much had a focus on mixed fermentation and saisons, and we love lambic and the traditions and the sort of shared traditions between British and Belgian brewing, I guess. And so that's something we've explored since we started, is because we love it.
So how do you bring the Belgian traditions to the UK?
Well, there's a sort of shared history in many ways.
Yeah.
So I think we've always been interested in that. We love lambic and saison and things, but we love the old British styles, stock ales, porters, and there's sort of there's an old tradition within the UK of blending beers.
Yeah.
A lot of it's forgotten, but
you have the new ale, the young ale, and the old ale blending.
And that kind of thing. So sort of taking the edge off a very sort of robust, shall we say, slightly stale beer, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or giving some a bit of an edge to a lighter beer. There's a lot to play with there. We've got 2 or 3 beers to blend. You can do a lot of interesting things. But anyway, that's sort of understood part of the sort of British tradition. But then, within Belgian brewing, there's obviously centuries of blending as well. And Belgian brewers and British brewers learn a lot from each other.
Yeah.
And that going back a long way, we're still doing that, and we find that quite interesting.
Sorry, we're kind of blocking the traffic here. So what inspires you to like? So when you think about UK breweries, you think New England IPAs mostly, or hazy
the
IPAs,
smaller, newer breweries from UK that we're getting now.
So when I think UK brewing, I think Cloudwater, Wylam's, those kind of breweries.
Right.
So how do you get into like sour beers and wild ales? I mean, what makes you go like IPAs? Yeah, okay, that's okay, but we wouldn't.
Well, we brew IPAs too, but I mean, I guess you brew what you like, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, we've always liked hoppy beers. We brew IPAs too, but we love saison and we love lambic. It's the holy grail, really. But we're not doing it because it's popular. I mean, it's nice that it's popular. It's nice that people want our beer, but we've always just done what we believe in.
Yeah.
And we've been fortunate that people have believed in what we're doing and they like what we do, so they drink it. But we're not chasing any kind of trends or anything like that. So we're not interested in that. But that's not to say that I think a diverse brewing scene in the UK is a great thing, and it's nice that breweries are doing those things because it's nice to try them. It's just not what we do necessarily.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, you are in an amazing source here. I mean, there's so many amazing breweries here.
What do you think of the festival?
It's a fantastic festival. There's some, like I say, some extraordinary breweries here. Getting a lot of ideas and meeting some lovely people. So it's not just the beer as well. We've had sort of seminars today, and it's been interesting. There's been sort of a lot of geekery.
Yeah.
But actually, no.
Honestly, this was like the geekiest beer festival I've ever been to.
But it is. But it's also that side. It's also very friendly. There's lovely people. It's a nice atmosphere. It's nice to it's nice to be a part of, definitely. Yeah.
So, are there wild ale festivals in the UK? I know there's like an IPA festival. There's there's stout festivals, but
there aren't many that specific. I mean, there are occasionally you have like actually there was one in at Northern Monk Brewery.
Yeah.
They do one every year. They do a dark beer festival. They did a sour and wild or something.
Yeah.
Which again we were invited to, which was very nice, and that was good fun. So I think there are things like that happening. Obviously, this is on a much bigger scale. This is quite something, and it's. But yeah, it's happening in the UK, definitely.
That's great because I feel that like the wild ale environment is just starting to explode and like expand in different environments, and so you see a lot of Belgian and American breweries here, but it's nice to see that like it's not just that. It's also like Spanish breweries and UK breweries, and it's really a lot of community around here.
Argentina's here.
Oh, it's fantastic. I think what's interesting about that is that there's everyone's bringing something from their host culture as well. So even though we're all focusing on using sort of, I guess the thing that connects all of the breweries here is that we're using some element of some wild fermentation, whether it's spontaneous fermentation or inoculation using some sort of form of wild yeast or a Brett or something like that. But people are using things which are native as well to their, or bringing. I mean, I had something today from, I think it was a Mexican brewery, and there was maybe like a tequila in there or something like that. It was unusual, but it was like I know where you're from. I'm tasting it in your, it's like you're bringing something.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, so everybody's doing that, even if it's just through their yeast, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what's so amazing is through all of the breweries, you're getting like the souring element is very, very different. So whether it's a lambic or it's a Brett or it's another type of kettle sour or whatever the souring method is, you can really feel the difference, and you can kind of start like, when I start fine-tuning what I like about a sour beer, it's this style over this style, and you can really start dialing in and almost like automating the kind of experience that you want to get from a sour beer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not something we've ever really thought about that much, in the sense that we don't really consider our beers sort of sour beers, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that sort of term has come along probably more in the last few years. It's become a bit of a sort of like seen as a style, I suppose. We don't really see things that way because we. I guess we see our beers as quite sort of sharp, a bit maybe a little tart, some acidity in there, but we don't, we age our beers for quite a long time, so that happens, it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
There is acidity in our beers, but it's not, there are different ways of achieving that. You can do that quite quickly.
Yeah.
As you know from sort of kettle souring, things like that, it's not really, we do it sort of the slower way. So we
and that's what I love about Burning Sky beers, is you guys are like, I don't feel like you're out to like make those like puckering kind of sour beers. It's like really natural, easygoing, very flavorful styles.
That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah.
We want them to be approachable. That's always the thing. So like we're looking for some degree of obviously some complexity in our beer and all of the rest of it, but we want them to be things that anyone can, well, hopefully as many people as possible can enjoy. But we don't want to alienate people with our beer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for your time here.
Hey, no worries.
And man, we love what you're doing. We can't wait to see the next two sessions.
Cool.
It's going to be very exciting. So thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so here we're talking tonight with
Karel Boon.
All right, Boon.
Yes.
Right. So you're actually a royalty name then.
Apparently.
Right. So
Royalty to us.
Right. So we're huge Boon fans, and the
Nice to meet you.
the Utguz Black Label is
Amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of held in very high esteem amongst us in Sweden.
Yeah.
And so you're here at a sour beer festival.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like the grandparents of it all. I mean, you guys are one of the founders of the Guz style. I mean, so before Crider and before Cantillon or 3F, I mean, you guys were there.
Yeah.
So how does that feel to be like the what's it called, the progenitors of the Guz style?
Well, first of all, of course, it's my father who started our brewery in 1975.
Yeah.
He started as a blender, and back then I think the only other, there was a big thing about like what is traditional Guz and traditional lambic at that time. And I think at a certain point, the only really traditional brewers that were around in the 80s, if you can still read this in books from that time, you can read the traditional goes you can taste is from Girardin, Boon, and Cantillon. Those are the only ones that were around back then. Now, yeah, it feels, to be honest. So yeah, my father started a brewery. I feel, of course, very privileged to be able to take over the brewery together with my brother Jos. Today, and it's something we've been always. We grew up at the brewery. It's we lived right next to the brewery, so we live and breathe lambic basically. But it's to be honest, big certainly, and I think the reason why that also like helped me like decide like I'm gonna work in the brewery and do this as for a living later. So what I'm doing today, it's also the fact that people showed the recognition for what my father always did. And the thing what we want to do is also continue what he has done in the past and continue doing this today.
So I feel like in the past like 2 to 3 years, there's been a real explosion in appreciation of the traditional Belgian lambic styles and goose styles. So like in the 80s, in the early 90s, I mean, nobody knew what the style was, and it must have felt like
fighting windmills.
Yeah. It's very much a Don Quixote tilting windmills experience. And now, like, people are like fighting over bottles of stuff.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy today. That's for sure. But back in the days when my father started, you have to imagine actually let's go a little bit further back, even in the early 20th century, just before the First World War, in Belgium. The consumption of lambic and faro, which is basically young lambic with candy sugar, was 1 million hectoliters.
Wow, that's a lot.
1 million hectoliters, which is huge. It's quite simply huge. Today is definitely not that much lambic being consumed, but that was just because it's simply an everyday beer. After the World Wars,
you guys don't do faro now, right?
Oh, we still have a faro. It's only in Belgium that we have it, but we do have it.
I've never seen it, so I'm
it's because it's quite local, and we've never really brought it to the export markets. It's only something very local. But no, in the early 20th century, you saw a lot of this beer being drunk. But then World Wars came along. Long story short, basically the Germans introduced lager beers, which were in a way cheaper to make, but also qualitative. And so the problem was that lambic producers, lambic blenders, which there were a lot of, I mean hundreds of blenders and brewers, they tried to compete with these pilsners, also in price. And the result is, if you're trying to make a beer, trying to sell a beer that is more expensive, which was lambic, and try to compete on price with Pilsner, it just doesn't work. So these breweries were not able to invest in their equipment, not able to invest into the future, and this beer simply had quality issues. And that was when my father started in 1975. As my father always tells me, and my grandfather actually also tells me, is like, basically said, my father was said to be a bit crazy, let's say, in the sense of, you're gonna start brewing lambic beer or blend lambic beer, why? It's a lost cause, or...
Yeah, because when you think of Belgian beers, like, I mean, lambic's got to be one of the most difficult to produce. You can just go, well, let's do a Belgian double or a Belgian triple, and, you know, just throw some candy sugar in there and do it with that, so...
Lambic is a very, very specific beer to produce. There's a lot of steps to take into account. The thing is also... The knowledge around brewing lambic is not very widespread. And what we are doing today at our brewery at Boon, it is never been done before. Technologically speaking, also scientifically speaking, we do our own research simply because no universities does the real necessary research that's necessary around this beer. For our brewing equipment, we have to invent everything ourselves because, well, the companies who make brew houses, yes, they are focused on top fermented beers and lagers and so on, but not on lambic because there's only so many lambic breweries, so there's no reason for them to look into this. If we ask to build a brew house and we go to some producer of brew houses, they will tell us, oh yes, but a turbid mash method, sure, but this step where you separate part of the brew, you can leave it out and just leave that out, and this is going to be more efficient and so on and so forth. But then they completely miss the point of what we're trying to make. It's because they don't know what we're trying to make. So this knowledge.
When it comes to lambic beer, there is a climate about that as well. So, all right. let's diverge a little bit into global warming, and I know it's like a hot button topic because it's ridiculous in today's society, but I mean the reality is that as temperatures rise, and it is becoming the seasons are becoming shorter.
True. Yeah.
So how are you addressing these kind of situations there? Are you looking at like maybe we can't do these styles of beers anymore, we need to look at moving further north?
Well, basically we can't move further north because the microflora that we need for our beer is only in the region where we are. So if you go in different regions in Belgium, we have actually done this test, you notice there is different effects on the fermentation you will get in the beer.
Yeah.
But for the global warming, which is something that we do notice, not just only on the shorter periods, you don't only notice it on the shorter periods of the cold period in the year. This is only, if you look at long term, like the last 50 years, you see this period becoming a little bit shorter over all this time. So there is something definitely going on. For us, it's not a big issue at the moment in the sense that we have plenty of capacity in the brew house. In 2013, we built a new fully automatic brew house. We're able to make 500 hectoliters per day in this brew house. We're brewing 11 weeks, 12 weeks per year in this brew house, and there is 20 cold weeks today.
Wow.
So there's still plenty of capacity for us to work within this margin. On the other hand, global warming is an issue not just for lambic beer, but for all beer.
Yeah.
Harvests get trouble with this as well. If there's just too much sun all the time, if it's raining when it's not supposed to rain, or raining too much, all these things, the weather influences our harvests. And this is for barley, for example, and wheat, it influences this. So this is not just for lambic beer, but for all beer, it's an issue. So we have the cold period, and so luckily we have the capacity to stay within the cold period with our brew house. It's important, obviously, but then global warming is also a very relevant topic for all beer.
So how protective do you feel of the cool ship lambic style versus the American Wild Ale equivalent? Because I know there's been a lot of talk about you can brew cognac in the cognac region, champagne region.
And then some American brewers call their wild ale lambic, which is it's not.
No.
It's not
Yeah.
lambic.
I think even if you even compare it to champagne and so on, I think lambic has an even bigger claim to a specific region than champagne, and simply because of the fact that we're using the environment microflora, which is different in other regions of the world.
Right.
Let's
what you're getting in Texas is not what you're going to get in California, which is certainly not what you're getting in Belgium.
No, but more specifically, you could make champagne outside of the Champagne region. It's a method, whereas lambic in the Pajottenland region, it's you can only get that yeast microflora there.
Yeah.
Exactly, and so that's if we use a fancy French word terroir, I think there is more terroir in lambic than anything else.
And very much so. And the inoculation in those cool ships are
you can
incredible.
definitely try to copy this production process, this brewing process anywhere else in the world. The question is, will you get a nice result? In our region, yes, definitely you get a very nice result. You go somewhere else, it might just be that the microflora is just not that nice. Spontaneously fermented beers, just imagine how long do we know about yeast cells, right? Spontaneously fermented beers, it's what always been made all those years ago in the past. Today we know much more, and the spontaneously fermented beers that survived in all those years are the ones from the Pajottenland, from the Zenne Valley, where we are. And definitely it has to do something with the fact that the result is fantastic. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm sure that maybe somewhere in the world there is a region where something else fantastic can be made. But then I'm quite sure the taste will be different. There will be other nuances, and that is the terroir of that region. So, to all Americans who want to make a spontaneously fermented beer, give that beer a name that is typical for your region.
I agree.
Quite simply.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. Because I think that the concept of spontaneously fermented beers can be done anywhere in the world.
Sure.
But the terroir and the the microclimates that are involved in that
Yeah.
are very specific to the region that they're actually produced in.
Absolutely, yeah.
I happen to like the term American Wild Ale. I think it's a nice term.
Yeah.
It describes the
Yeah.
flavor you're getting.
Because I was talking to someone at some point and I told him like, yeah, to me this tastes like an American sour beer, and he's like, what do you mean with American sour beer? What is that even? But for me it was like the typical acidity which was more present, and a few other things which were more present. And I would say like this is typical what you get from American brewers who try to make this beer. So for me this is American. I mean,
Yeah.
and maybe those brewers want to even go further, maybe balance a bit more, which would be nice to be my opinion. But then again, if that's what Americans like, then it's typical for their taste, and then it's the American style.
Yeah.
And in our case, lambic is the Belgian style, so it's from our region, and again, it's the terroir. And it's the perception on how it should be, and secondly, it's quite simply, well, you have the microflora of the region. It's just like it is in our region and different in another place. So, yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I could talk to you for another hour. Honestly, this is so fascinating. We could really deep dive into this, but unfortunately, we need to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
No, pleasure.
I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad you guys are here.
I'm a bit starstruck.
Yeah. But like, Boon is one of my favorite breweries.
Pleasure.
And thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
This podcast is part of the Pod Syndicate family. For more criminally compelling shows, articles, and conversations, head to wearepodsyndicate.com.